This weekend, Thunderbolts, the final film of MCU Phase 5, dropped in theaters. Now, originally, I was planning on just ranking the films of MCU Phase 5, but there's been a lot of chatter about how this is one of the best films post-Endgame. With that in mind, today we're going to stop and rank all 14 post-Endgame MCU films from the worst to the best. Hi, my name is Sean, and I love to talk about movies and TV way too much. With that in mind, go ahead and join me down below in the comments section. Share your ranking of all 14 post-Endgame MCU films. My list is not the right list, it's just my list, and I would love to see yours. And this includes all the movies of Phases 4 and 5, plus Spider-Man Far From Home. And let's get started. In last place, Thor, Love and Thunder. This is a movie that I didn't like it when I first watched it, and the more I thought about it, I liked it even less, and when I rewatched it, it solidified the fact that I really do not like this movie for so many different reasons, but at its core, I feel like it's an unbelievable waste of so many good ideas and great performers, where the central conflict of the movie is basically the philosophical and theological problem of evil. But instead of doing this fascinating look at if God is all-powerful and all-good, why is there evil in the world? We get this irreverent, silly, goofy movie that is flicking off Thor's clothes to show naked Chris Hemsworth. Then we cast Christian Bale, comic book movie legend, and he's playing this very serious, dark villain in a very goofy movie that features a love triangle between Thor, Jane, and a hammer. I mean, it just cannot pick a cohesive tone. It's unable to take anything seriously. And anything in here that would potentially be good is just immediately undercut with something unbelievably silly, goofy, and it's a point in time where you go, what was so refreshing, the irreverence that was so refreshing about Ragnarok is just taken to such an extreme level where it just feels disrespectful to the source material, the franchise, and the fans.
Sometimes people drop stinkers.
The Marvels. Superficially, it's a fun movie. The team, the Marvels themselves, have a nice rapport, and Miss Marvel herself, I find to be a very charming, endearing character. Pretty much everything else about this movie is just an utter mess. From the fact that if you just stop and think about the plot of the movie, a planet that doesn't have air or the sun or something like that, trying to steal the air from other planets, like it's just kind of nonsense.
This is a mess. None of these storylines make any sense.
It is kind of borrowing the plot from Spaceballs. From that level to the fact that they decided to do a rehash of one of the most boring villains in the MCU, Ronan the Accuser, except an even weaker version, to the fact that it's a movie that was so obviously rewritten, reshot, and reworked in the editing room, where it feels like gigantic chunks of the movie are just missing from the middle of the film, as if there was something else supposed to happen that got changed when the movie got reworked. And this isn't just conjecture or rumors. It's well documented that this movie had extensive reshoots, that Nia DaCosta, before the movie came out, said, yeah, I mean, this is a Kevin Feige production. You know, you're working for him, doing what he says. And then more recently, this year, with a couple of years to reflect on the film, she openly stated that the movie that was made wasn't what she originally pitched, and it's not even what she originally filmed, that you just kind of have to go along with the process, and it's their movie, you work for them. And to me, that's what's been so frustrating about so much of Phase 4 and 5, where these projects feel directed by committee and written by committee. The Marvels is one of the worst examples of this. Speaking of movies directed by committee, Eternals does not feel that way. This is kind of a very different sort of film, to where I have a lot of issues with it, but I respect that it's a movie that has a clear creative vision. It feels like Chloe Zhao's movie. It doesn't feel directed and written by committee. It has its own flaws, its own issues, but to its credit, They took a risk. They allowed her to do something different. I don't think it paid off, but I think these are the risks I want them to take. I respect this movie in that regard more than I enjoy the film. It feels like a film where they were trying to kind of go outside the box, do something a little bit more elegant, something a little bit morally complex. It was an interesting failure, an interesting miss, where, as many other people have said, I think that this would have worked much better as a Disney Plus series. And it just needed more screen time to introduce all these characters that we did not know before, expand on this lore that had not been introduced before, and tell its own story. When you try to do let's get the gang back together story with characters we've never met before, with this whole rich lore, while trying to subvert the concept of a hero and what it means to save the day and why they're on this planet, all in under 3 hours, I think you get a movie that doesn't fully succeed at any of the things that it's trying to do. I respect its ambition. I don't think that it works, but I do think it could have worked as a TV show that had much more runtime. Next up, Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Another one of these projects that just kind of feels like generic MCU stuff that, once again, we know that this is a film that was reworked, reshot, all the way up until about a month before the movie came out. There were reports of them still reshooting and changing the movie. And it leaves you with a movie that, once again, it's superficially entertaining. I don't hate this film. It's entirely watchable to me, but it's not satisfying. It just feels so bland and dull, despite doing this massive world building that's kind of doing this Star Wars-esque rebellion plotline against Kang, and we're supposedly introducing who was going to be the big bad of the multiverse saga. There's so many things here that make it so it should be this huge film, and all of it feels so hollow. And even the actors themselves have talked about a little bit of that, where Evangeline Lilly discussed the script and said this.
Do you know what's strange? Is the script reads much more straightforward than the film itself. When I saw the film, I was like, this is, like you said, this is bananas.
Yeah. So whatever that is, that they're just tinkering way too much.
Too many cooks, too many cooks.
You get to the end of this movie and it just feels toothless. And you kind of go, if Kang's supposed to be our big bad, this is our big introduction, and he was able to be defeated by Ant-Man and his team of ants, what do we need the Avengers for? Why is this guy an Avengers level threat if Ant-Man just defeated him? According to reports, the original ending to the film was going to involve, in their efforts to try to stop Kang, that Scott and Hope would be stuck in the quantum realm and Kang would have escaped, so they would have lost, and they would have been responsible for kind of setting them off on this trajectory of everything was about to happen. And then they went toothless at the end, and it was just like, we won, happy ending, we're victorious. And it just felt like just cut the legs off of this threat, and in this movie that was already fairly bland. Bringing us into the top 10, Captain America: Brave New World. And this is another one that just feels very disappointing. Another one that feels kind of written and directed by committee. Another one that infamously went through extensive transformative reshoots. Now, reshoots are a regular part of any big blockbuster. These days, it's kind of built in the schedule. We're going to go back and do reshoots. And normal reshoots are just a couple of weeks to pick up a little scene here. And then there's extensive reshoots that are meant to be transformative to fix problems. This is a movie that was delayed a full year. Is that they dramatically changed the villain plotline in it. They added Giancarlo Esposito as a new character during the reshoots. And they completely reshot all of Leader's scenes. There was a totally different design for Leader, and the actor himself said, yeah, we shot that movie twice. I shot all my scenes, and then I came back a year later, and I shot all of my scenes again. He openly stated that before the movie came out. Not trying to throw the movie under the bus, but just talking about the movie-making process.
What's going on with Captain America: Brave World?
But I am not a part of that film, so maybe they'll be like,
What happened?
The script went through a lot of rewrites and reshoots, but they ended up going in a different direction with it. And so what I was there to do, essentially my role got either repurposed or completely erased.
and you get the movie, and I enjoyed that it did feel like the MCU's coming together, and we're following up on plot lines from different pieces, and we're referencing a lot of Incredible Hulk, and in a lot of ways this is more a sequel to Incredible Hulk than it is the Captain America movies, and I kind of like that. I really enjoy the Isaiah Bradley character, but the movie makes the MCU feel more cohesive than the movie itself feels cohesive, because you constantly can feel that you're watching a movie duct taped together with reshoots and rewrites. And that cheapens the film, and you can't set up a great finale when the beginning of the movie wasn't designed to lead to this finale. Just there's all sorts of issues that happen when you're trying to fix it by moving everything around and reshooting it. So just a lot of things about it were good in a movie that overall was very underwhelming. Number 9, Spider-Man Far From Home. And this is a film that I wish I could have higher on this list because I find the cast very charming. There's plenty of solid laughs here. The Mysterio sequences, I think, are some of the cooler action sequences in the film as they go into this full dream world. They're very inventive and very creative. But all of this is in a movie that I think makes absolutely no sense and is built on just such a flimsy and stupid idea, both in terms of the concept that Tony Stark left his military grade weapons to a high schooler that was dead until 5 minutes before Tony died, without any instructions, without any training, just kind of, whoop, here you go, here's this thing.
That's a weird story.
It's just a ludicrous plot line. Why didn't you give it to Happy, to Pepper, to Rhodey? Like, anyone else makes more sense than giving it to a high schooler with no instructions. Like, that's just, it's nonsense. Peter was dead right before Tony died. What are we doing? It's nonsense. To the fact that Mysterio's plan is to fake being the greatest superhero in the world so that whenever there's a real threat, he'll die. Like, what is his end game here? What is he actually working towards? And then there's a sequence in this movie where our underage Peter Parker walks into a room and a grown woman in private tells him to take off all of his clothes.
Take off your clothes.
Okay.
Just flip this. Zendaya, MJ walks into a room, underage MJ, and Nick Fury goes, take off all of your clothes and change in front of me.
No, don't like that.
And you immediately go, oh, that's not a good scene. That's a bad idea, but it's in this movie. Like they didn't stop to think about the implications of a grown-up telling an underage child to take their clothes off right in front of them while they're watching. And then the thing I've said it many times before, but for like the 1 billionth time, we have a villain who is motivated by scorn for Tony Stark. Give me, baby, one more time. So I get why a lot of people enjoy this movie. It does have some emotional resonance to it. It is fun. I just don't think it makes any sense. It just has such a ill-conceived central plot line. Next up, Black Widow. This is a movie that I enjoy more than most people. I think it has a lot more to offer than people give it credit for. I will say this, and I said this actually before the movie came out, that I thought that Black Widow would probably lend herself better to a TV show than to a movie because she doesn't have superpowers. And doing a spy thriller about her history and her family, and that works on a TV show budget a little bit better. All the best stuff in here is the family dynamic. It is the grounded stuff. Do that as a TV show where you get even more of kind of that backstory and with flashbacks, could have been even better. But what we got in the movie, I kind of loved. The two one of my issues with this movie is that Yelena in Red Guardian outshine Natasha in her own movie.
This thing that you do when you whip your hair when you're fighting. It's a fighting pose. You're a total poser.
I'm not a poser.
They're doing a passing of the baton movie in a lot of ways, but also it's the one and only time where Natasha got to be just the star. It was her movie, and even in her own movie, they gave us these characters that are just so much more, such flashier characters that they ended up stealing all the scenes from the actual Black Widow, who finally got her time in the spotlight, and Yelena and Red Guardian stole it from her. But that's also to say, I really enjoyed a lot of the characters that were introduced here. But also you move into the third act and they ruin Taskmaster with a plot twist where you're like, oh, Taskmaster's just basically a human robot that's a plot device, not the real Taskmaster. Ooh. And you move into the third act and it just felt like they needed to have this big sensational third act, and it turns into a full-blown cartoon sequence with them like sword fighting while falling out of the sky. David Harbour openly stated that they reworked the movie while they were shooting it.
They do rework stuff, even big productions. Like Black Widow, the entire third act was reworked as we were shooting.
And that's the stuff why you end up having horrible VFX. It's that they had to keep changing the VFX and last minute changing it because of reshoots and rewrites. And so you get these shots that just look terrible inside of it, and it's very cartoonish. If they'd stuck to more grounded spy level stuff, it would have been a better third act. Not everything needs to be cranked up to 11 with people raining out of the sky while sword fighting. Cool choreography, which this movie has, with Taskmaster, who can master other people's. That would have been an awesome finale, way cooler than people raining down from the sky. Once again, why you do it at the scale of a TV show. And I think this could have been even better. 7, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. This is one where I have so many conflicting feelings because in a lot of ways, this is Evil Dead Sam Raimi making another comic book movie.
Groovy.
Where the sequence where Wanda in Scarlet Witch is just killing people, it goes full horror sequence. The third act when we have zombie Doctor Strange showing up. Sam Raimi's Army of Darkness, Evil Dead 2, all that stuff was very formative for me in the 90s. Loved getting back to that. But this movie is only partially Sam Raimi's Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. A huge chunk of the movie feels directed by committee. Feels dramatically rewritten, which we know it was rewritten because one of the actresses said they did over 30 rewrites of the script, and the co-lead of our movie, Wanda, Elizabeth Olsen, openly stated she stopped reading the scripts because she was getting so many different drafts.
There's a point in making the movie where I just stopped reading drafts. I was like, this is just gonna change again.
And then all of the people in our Illuminati sequence, they've openly started to admit they did not know who else was in the sequence with them.
So did you even know which characters were going to end up in that finished scene? Like,
I didn't. I think that they were, we did lots of different things, lots of different takes, and then they kind of, the way that they edited it was like, oh, suddenly just very quick.
Because they were shooting alone.
Were you alone? Like, were you with the other actors?
I was alone.
You were alone. That's what I thought. The magic of movie making. Was everybody there when you shot your stuff?
No. John Krasinski wasn't there. Patrick Stewart wasn't there. So it was weird.
I think each one of the leading actors had the same experience. They were shot on their own.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
Frustrating and disappointing.
And so you just kind of get this very oddball of a movie where it's cool to see cameos, but they're truly just cameos with no greater impact. Daniel Craig supposedly shot a cameo for it. And when you're just doing this rewrite, repatch work, who can get in here, throw them in a green screen, cut it together, you get a movie that ultimately is not nearly as satisfying as it should be.
Just CGI is going to sort everything out. And
I did my voiceover work to make everything that I'd already done on camera make sense. That's how we did Doctor Strange. That one was a wild ride.
And so there's a lot of ways where there's like, you just wish that they'd gone all in, trusted Raimi to go bananas with this thing, but they didn't. And you got this very producer-driven film that kind of sucked some of the life out of a film that has these bursts of creative genius that I really enjoy. Number 6, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever. And this is a film where I feel like they did the absolute best they could with the limitations that they had, which is to say they had fully developed a film. We're getting ready to start filming a movie starring Chadwick Boseman, and then he died. And because of that, the movie carries tremendous emotional weight, for better or for worse. That if you're talking about a movie that, one of the things movies are supposed to do is draw emotions out of you. This movie does that. At the same time, it's also one of the reasons it's a film that I don't really like to rewatch, because it's a lot like attending a funeral. There's quite literally 2 different funerals in the movie. One of them is representative of an actual actor dying. And it makes for a very heavy, weighty film that's also trying to be fun in a popcorn blockbuster. Ryan Coogler has discussed the original concept for the film, where it was originally going to be another father-son story. So if the first movie was about, from the son's perspective, stepping into this role, then the second movie was going to be, now T'Challa comes back from the blip, learning that he has his son, and the person that he loves has married someone else because he died. And so you get a story about him as from the father's perspective, passing things on to his son, who's kind of pulled on this adventure. And you hear that and you go, oh man, I would have loved to have seen what that movie was going to be. But it kind of had to turn into this much darker story about him dying, and then his mother dies and his sister's filled with rage. Some of the stuff with, like, there's a lot of things with Namor I really liked. I think the social commentary of it isn't nearly as strong. It was a lot more organic and natural in the first film than in the second film. But like, it's a movie that I think got a lot of things right, in particular because of the corner that they were backed into, but also a movie that it's just tough to want to re-explore. Bringing us into the top 5, Shang-Chi. And I feel like with a bunch of the Phase 4 and 5 movies that I've enjoyed, I feel like I have to say, oh, I really loved this about the movie, but... And Shang-Chi's a perfect example of that. If you don't know my backstory with getting into movie reviews, my very first movie webpage was a Jackie Chan fan page way back in 1998. And I got huge into Hong Kong cinema, in particular the Jackie Chan brand, but also the Jet Li brand with the wire fu and everything like that. And Shang-Chi brings all of that stuff, the different versions, into the world of the MCU. So it kicks off with this kind of elegant fight that's in wire fu, reminiscent of Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. Then you get to the bus fight, and it gets kind of more into a Jackie Chan style fighting. We're using the environment and hopping through things with stunt work and little gags, timed with very rhythmic choreography. Every time that stuff happened, it was speaking my language. And then I feel like the villain is very compelling, where there's a very relatable desire that leads him to do evil things, where he's trying to be better, but there's a darkness that pushes him towards things. Bunch of stuff in the movie I really enjoyed, but as you kind of move into the back half with the Trevor stuff, got very silly, and he just kind of feels like an out-of-place character. There's some stuff that just gets so overly CGI in a movie that I loved it for its practical stunt work and choreography. We move into the third act, and it's all, we're literally flying on dragons and shooting ray beams, and it gets all CGI stuff that was all less interesting to me. And it was like the MCU-isms, the mandatory MCU-isms to be more spectacular and have plenty of humor, cheapened what I loved about the first 2/3 of the movie. So it's like really good, but there's some stuff I didn't like. Number 4, Deadpool and Wolverine. And the other thing about the MCU films of phases 4 and 5 that I've really enjoyed is that there's the ones that have the, oh, I really enjoyed it, but movies, and then there's, I really enjoyed it because there's a gimmick. And this one kind of falls into that category where this film is such a great fan event for people that have been watching comic book movies for a long time like me. It's this celebration of the Fox Marvel universe. And it made a new generation fall in love with Wesley Snipes' Blade, and took a project that never happened, Channing Tatum's Gambit, and turned it into a really fun joke. And that's what this movie did so well. It even does, the quick little cameos with the Cavalry and stuff like that. It's very true to Deadpool, in that it's irreverent and it's really funny, and we're fighting with Wolverine's bones, and we're doing all that fun stuff. Hugh Jackman kind of brings the gravitas and emotion to that Ryan Reynolds isn't able to bring to these movies. I think Ryan Reynolds is a good actor, but because he just always has that little bit of a wink at the audience, it's always a certain reverence to him. He can't go where Hugh Jackman can go and bring such sincerity to him. All that said, though, like, it's a movie that, the plot of it is basically what was at episode 5 of Loki season 1. It's basically the same plot of an episode of Loki. It is part of the MCU, but it's like we're just borrowing from the MCU to be able to tell this story. It doesn't feel like it has any significance to anything grander. Like, it doesn't strike me as like a great movie. It's a great fan event. And there's nothing wrong with that. It was one of my top 10 favorite movies of last year because it was just so wildly entertaining and pulled at all the right nostalgia strings. But also kind of like, that feels like a gimmicky type of enjoyment rather than just like a great movie. Real quick, before I give you my top 3, remember to join me down below in the comments section. Let me know your ranking of all of the post-Endgame MCU films. My list is not the right list. It's just my list. I would love to see yours. I will have more MCU content over the next few days, and I'll do all of my big updates after Fantastic Four. It's been a couple of years since I've done those big rankings, so all of that will be after we get our last movie of the year. In third, Spider-Man No Way Home. Much like how Deadpool and Wolverine was a fan event for the Fox X-Men universe, Spider-Man No Way Home was a very special event for Spider-Man fans. On a dramatically deeper level, I think this was way more special than Deadpool and Wolverine. Deadpool and Wolverine was like a really fun, like, oh, it's like what we're doing here, versus you don't realize just how much you care about Peter Parker in particular, that they kept it a secret. Maybe the worst kept secret in Hollywood, but that they didn't market the movie using Toby and Andrew. It was a really special event for fans and very satisfying. I mean, they're in the movie for 40 minutes. It's not just a cameo. It's 40 minutes of the movie, and they kept it a secret. And if you were there opening weekend, you know how cool that was to be in the theater, how big of an emotional reaction it drew out of people.
It was so crazy in there, like literally like everyone was standing up and screaming.
I know, my voice is gone. I was clapping, screaming.
There's a bunch of parts where people are like, whoa!
And the movie on a whole is very entertaining. It's a very funny and fun film from beginning to end. But as I've always said, the specific mechanism and rationale for doing this very special event, I don't find compelling at all. Peter Parker didn't get into college and his friends didn't get into college, so he goes to his wizard to help him out, and then he can't shut up. And they don't talk about the parameters before doing the spell, and therefore they screw up the multiverse. This is a very episodic, flimsy setup for such a special film.
Brilliant but lazy.
That's why we're going to get into Deadpool and Wolverine in this movie. I think of them as like very special events for the fans. And I don't want to in any way diminish what you felt, what I felt watching these movies and still feel with these movies. But the idea of he didn't get into college and he got his wizard friend to cast a spell and they accidentally goofed it up. This is not a great dramatic storytelling at its core. So that to me why it's kind of always will hold this movie back. Our runner-up, Thunderbolts. As I just kind of mentioned before, with a lot of the MCU movies that I've enjoyed in Phases 4 and 5, I felt like I either had to say, man, it was really great, or it was really great as a fan experience. And then I watched Thunderbolts and I just really dug that. I don't need to clarify it. I don't need to put parameters on it. I don't need to explain why I liked it. They just made a movie that made me fall in love with a set of characters. It's very much the MCU's Suicide Squad, but it's also very much an earthbound versions of Guardians of the Galaxy. And I don't say any of those as negatives. I say those as positives. That they took a bunch of rejects, losers, and made you fall in love with them, made you care about them. And they told one of the most character-based films in the entire MCU. It's actually about something. That's where a lot of people are saying, this feels like a real movie. It's not just the next episode of the MCU. It's not just a roller coaster ride. It's not just a cameo fest. It doesn't feel shot and written by committee and reworked. It's a movie that has a cohesive vision that's about something. It's exploring depression, loneliness, mental illness, lack of purpose, regret. Very human, relatable things. And it's not subtle about it. Like, we keep going back to it. These are all very broken people that need each other. In the third act, it's not just a big CGI army. It's this surrealist world. And they did most of it practical. And it's meant to be a visualization of the theme of the movie.
There's a lot of grounded stuff in this movie and a lot of grounded action. There is a whole surrealist side to the film. And I think that traditionally in this world, you might, lean pretty hard on visual effects to do that.
We're visualizing what the movie's about on screen. The MCU doesn't normally do that. That's not how these things normally work. And so it just kind of felt very refreshing. It ends and we're like, oh, now I see where we're headed. That's the way MCU movies used to feel. And I felt it again with this movie. But coming in at number 1, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. Now, the first Guardians of the Galaxy was such a pleasant surprise. I remember when it was first announced, and I thought that Kevin Feige lost his mind, and James Gunn made us fall in love with the D-list of Marvel Comics. And then, of course, he was fired over tweets from the past.
Oh, no.
And then DC hired him, and then Marvel rehired him. One of the craziest long journeys to get to this film coming out. And it was such a satisfying conclusion to this journey. It was a set of characters that at the beginning, they needed to be together to be the better versions of themselves. And then after all these years of their adventures, they reach a point in time where maybe this family's what's holding some of them back. And so you feel the heartbreak of where things end in regards to the end of the Guardians as we know it. But also you feel satisfied as these characters are becoming that better version of themselves and finding their new place in this world and what they always were. And that Drax, at his core, despite the oafishness and the aggressiveness, is a dad. And things like that, like these little moments that are just so sweet.
Analogy.
Is it?
Metaphor.
Beyond that, they tell a story about Rocket that is just... that James Gunn's gift is being able to take the weirdest, strangest, most alien characters and tell the most gut-wrenching, relatable stories. So powerful while still being funny. And after this long journey with these characters that I love, it ended it in such a satisfying way. And when I look back at the films over this last era, what are the ones that cut through, that made me feel something? And I was like, yes, you did it. One that comes to mind, and on top, is Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. So it comes in. That's 2 numbers. At number 1. Remember to join me down below in the comment section with your list. Also, I've done a bajillion MCU videos in the past. Loving them, hating them, ranking them, editorializing them, pitching things. You can check it out all somewhere around here. Hey, thank you so much for watching. And keep talking movies and TV.